really get done by the end of the year. Let's talk about these two tax plans with South Carolina Republican. Senator Tim Scott is here. He's a member of the Finance Committee. And I say that with emphasis because I want to learn something from you here. Because there is so much to try to wrap your mind around here. And you see the details of this tax plan that the Senate has laid out. And when it comes to one big key difference in that corporate tax rate, is there any decision on delaying that corporate tax rate? The House says it would be effective immediately, 20%. The president has said he wants that. In your plan, you're talking about a delay.
Yeah, so our plan delays the beginning of the corporate tax rate by 1 year. The good news is it's permanent. So forever and ever, amen, the new corporate tax rate would remain at 20% forever. That's our goal. How we achieve that goal includes a 1 year delay. But the good news, when we talk to businesses, the Business Roundtable, they look at the opportunity of expensing this first year as a real opportunity to get the economic drivers moving in the right direction, because the value of those expenditures are more valuable this year than they will next year. But how do you expect to come to a compromise on that, though? I mean, the White House has said 20% immediately. The president has put emphasis on that. You know, I know that you are going to tell me that you're not so far apart, but to many, that sounds like that's going to be tough to come to a compromise on. Of course, that's the good news, is we have Republicans in control of all three levers, and the goal of getting tax reform done is merely weeks away. So we are in a very good position. Anyone who would think that both bodies would come to the exact same place at the exact same time, the first shot, I think is unrealistic. The ask of the American people is to deliver tax reform that includes tax cuts for individual households as well as for our business community.
Which is why I want to get
so that we have the future, the economy
Senator,
of the future.
I'm sorry I'm talking over you. There's so much to get to in here.
I will continue to talk to you.
So I apologize.
That's okay. I'll talk as well.
The full repeal of the state and local tax deduction, the SALT. House Republican Tom Reed weighed in on this as you unveiled this plan yesterday. It's just not something that will make its way through the House, he says. As for the Senate, I just don't see how that math works to get to tax reform. What do you say to him?
I say if I was living in New York, maybe I would have the same opinion. For the rest of the state, 41 states around the country who are subsidizing high tax states, this is a place where we're going to have to find some common ground. Getting there we will, but the fact is that for the vast majority of the country, that $1.3 trillion can be spent equitably across the tax code by taxpayers across the country.
Here's what one leading Democrat, Chuck Schumer, how he's responding to this, and I'll get your take on the other side. Chuck Schumer.
Sure.
Senate Republicans are telling House Republicans there'll be no compromise on state and local deductibility. It's full repeal or bust.
Your response?
Well, it would be nice if Chuck and the Democrats would come to the table and want to compromise. We haven't seen them around this tax reform conversation, so that's unfortunate. But once again, if he lives in New York, and he does, the reality of it is the rest of the country has been subsidizing high tax states for a very long time. There will likely be a conversation that will lead into the conference committee that will provide some relief at some point, but right now, the Senate plan is very clear. We believe that the states that are not high tax should not be subsidizing those states that are. We'll get into that conversation. I'm sure that there'll be a way for us to get to the bottom line and get tax reform done.
I want to run this piece in the Washington Post by you, published this morning, reflecting the thoughts of a couple who lives in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. It's titled, "I Don't Feel Wealthy. The upper middle class is worried about paying for the tax overhaul." Together, this couple, they make $180,000 a year. They would be classified as solidly in the upper middle class. They have a mortgage, 3 kids, one in daycare, one on the way to college. They say, I don't feel wealthy. I don't have a bunch of money stashed away anywhere. So a lot of people wonder, in their case, they're worried about paying for this tax overhaul and how it affects them. It's time we kind of ask the question, who falls under the category of middle class?
Well, that's a great question. No doubt the 180,000 household that you were just describing is closer to the top of the middle class from my perspective. I think the middle class ends around 250 for most places around the country. If you look at the top 25 metropolitan areas, the beginning of the top 10% and the highest city is around 250. So to me, that's a good place for the middle class.
So how would you respond to that family and their concerns?
Well, I would say that with 3 kids, you have a $1,650 child tax credit. That's about $4,950 for those 3 kids. You get a double standard deduction of $24,000. The reality of it is, under our plan, the taxes for that person is likely going down because that's one of the reasons why we expanded the child tax credit not to $110,000 of income, but over $400,000 of household income, so as to make sure that person doesn't see a tax increase.
Yeah, we chatted with Senator Marco Rubio about that yesterday. Senator Tim Scott, thank you very much for coming on.
Absolutely.
All right.
See what happens.